So Tomer Asley, who covers the NBA, he posted this tweet on Twitter, aka X, and he said James Harden was on a China tour, and he said, "quote Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be part of an organization that he's part of. Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be part of an organization that he's part of again," James Harden said. So here's the deal. So, we kind of gone through this before with Daryl Morey and James Harden a few years ago when Harden was in Houston and he wanted to get traded from the Rockets. And Daryl Morey, I don't think really wanted to trade James, but then James showed up out of shape and kind of forced his way out of Houston, and he ended up in Brooklyn. So I don't know the conversation that Daryl Morey and James Harden had recently. And the worst thing that Daryl Morey should have done was promise James anything, because James Harden is just a different player at this point of his career. Like a few years ago, yeah, you could probably promise James in Houston that we'll trade you to Brooklyn or someplace like that, but you can't do that now because James isn't the same guy. So here's the deal. James Harden is a Hall of Fame NBA player. His tale is totally amazing. How he played with OKC, with Russ and KD, and he was more of a defensive guy off the bench. And then he gets traded to Houston and becomes a star. Magnificent story, scoring champ, amazing player at his peak. But the one thing that was consistent with James Harden is that he always folded in the playoffs. James Harden will always give you great stats, but for some reason he did not have the ability to carry a team to a championship. And so he forced his way out of Houston because he wanted to play with KD in Brooklyn. He ended up playing with KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn, and he didn't like that. Even after they traded Kyrie and it was KD and James didn't want to be there. And James forced his way out of Brooklyn, and he ended up in Philadelphia with Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid was like really happy because he was dealing with Ben Simmons. And Embiid was ecstatic when James Harden first got there. But like James in his previous stops, he couldn't help the Sixers go to the championship. And compounding that, James has had soft tissue injuries over the years. So now we have James Harden now. He's in Philadelphia. He doesn't want to be in Philadelphia. The word is he either wants to be traded to the Clippers or the Rockets. I'm not sure how true either one is, but that seems to be the two teams he wanted to. And he picked up his player option, $36.5 million, which is great. Like, I wish I could make $36.5 million for 1 year. And this will be the last year of his contract. The problem that James got to understand is teams don't want to trade for him. They all know he's a talented player, but it's everything else that comes along with it. James has not been the healthiest player the past few years. James has shown that he cannot carry a team in the playoffs. James has shown that if he's not happy, he becomes disgruntled and it's just bad for the team. And at $36.5 million, that's a lot of salary that a team needs to absorb. If I'm a NBA team, why would I trade for James Harden at this point? Now, James Harden, I think it will be 34 this August, which is not an old man, but in basketball terms, he's been around for a long time. KD's an older player, but the reason why I think Phoenix traded for KD is that KD's like 7'1". KD doesn't need the ball in his hands. And even though he's also had injury issues, he fit in very seamlessly into Phoenix, just like how he fit in with Golden State and he fit in with Brooklyn. Like, KD is just one of those players that it doesn't matter what offense it is, he can just fit in, and he's 7'1" and can shoot the lights out. James is a squatty point guard who, even for his size, is still very productive, but he just hasn't shown the ability to lead. And it's hard for any point guards to lead to a championship unless you're Magic Johnson or Isaiah Thomas. You don't see LeBron as a point guard, but he plays the point a lot. But, there's very few people who can lead a team to a championship, and James Harden just isn't that person. And if you're the LA Clippers, do you want to trade for James? Like, you got Russ. You got Russ, you got Kawhi, and you got Paul George. That's enough. The Clips got to figure out what they want to do, what's going to happen with Kawhi and Paul George. Russ is fine. Like, Russ, I think, is very happy. He resigned with the Clippers. And I think he's cool with the Clippers. I think he's fine, no matter how they play him off the bench. But I think he's comfortable with the Clippers. And I don't want, and how would you bring in uh, Harden into that scenario? Because Russ needs the ball in his hands and James needs the ball in his hands. So I'm not sure how that would work. The thing with Houston is that Houston's a totally different team than when he left. When he left Houston, he was the king of Houston. It was a veteran team. If he gets traded back to Houston, I don't know why he's going to do that. He's going back to a very young team. Jalen Green probably thinks that's his team. And most importantly, I think Ime Udoka wants to see how these young guys play together. And if they don't gel together, I think they will trade some of their young pieces. But I think they're going to trade them for veterans who fits within Udoka's system or who can be great leaders for that young talent. And as talented as James is, I don't think James is really good for young talent. And the thing about Daryl Morey, I do believe that Daryl Morey is trying to trade James. Like, I was like, dude, I'm trying to trade you. I wasn't lying about that. I'm really trying to trade you to a team that you want to go to. But James got to understand is like a lot of teams are not going to give up their assets because if I'm the Clippers, why would I give up Paul George, right? Let's say I give up Paul George some assets. Yeah, but look, what if James gets here and he's not satisfied playing for the Clippers and he wants out? Then I gave up Paul George for nothing. Like, even though Phoenix gave up Ben Simmons, and that wasn't really a loss, they gave up some assets to get James. And I think with Embiid there, I think they really thought they had a shot. And the person we probably need to talk to is Embiid. Like, how does Joel Embiid feel like that James wants to get out of Philadelphia? Because Embiid hasn't done anything wrong. I think Embiid just wants to win, right? He's not, even though he's a great player, he's not Shaq or Tim Duncan. He's not that type of center who can kind of lead a team to the championship. But he's a very viable number two. I mean, I wish the Cavs had Joel Embiid to play along with Donovan Mitchell, but the Cavs couldn't trade for Embiid just because they don't have that many assets. And as a Cavs fan, we don't know if Donovan Mitchell actually wants to stay a Cav or he wants to go to the Knicks. And I got nothing against Donovan Mitchell if he goes or stays. Like, I wish he would stay with Cleveland, but he wanted to go to the Knicks initially anyway. So I understand if the Cavs maybe trade Donovan Mitchell down the road just because maybe he actually wants to play for the Knicks instead of the Cavs. So I totally understand that. The Cavs will probably be able to get stuff back in return, like assets. So, but we'll keep an eye on that. But 76ers would never trade Embiid. He's that franchise player. He just needs help. And he got to feel sick to his stomach. Like, man, like, I had to deal with Ben Simmons and now I got to deal with James. And I don't know what to do. So as far as James Harden go, James Harden's he's trying to push his way out of Philadelphia, saying like, Daryl Morey is a liar. I don't want to be part of this franchise. But, James at this point don't have any leverage. You see that in his picture? He's a pudgy little point guard. Still effective, but he doesn't have the same leverage he had when he was in Houston. He just doesn't. So do I think they will trade him? Yeah. The question is, will they get pennies on the dollar? Or if Philadelphia can't trade James might have to take a buyout. And I don't think James want a buyout. I think James want to keep all his money. But if James really want to leave Houston, if James really want to leave Philadelphia and he can't get a trade, he might have to do a buyout.